Thank you very much. We're going to shortly have a performance from our musicians here today, which is Matej and Rebecca. They've got a little duet planned out for you. Just before we do that, just a quick introduction. This is the sound control project, and Jan, myself, Rebecca, Matej, and other children have been involved in this project since, actually I can't remember when we started it, but it was probably around about 2014, 2015. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, like the rest of the world, due to the pandemic, and we're just getting back into developing things a little bit further. The first thing I was going to say was that on your schedules, there is a bold claim given that this is a device that can connect any external hardware device to make any sound. Well, let me put it like that. I didn't write that bit. But I think that is our overriding ambition, that in time this software will begin to map out how we can do that. But at the moment, I think the lead programmer, Dr. Rebecca Feebrink, who's not here today, I think for today's purposes, and in this context, when there's so many clever people in the room who do lots of wonderful things with their own tech, I think what we have here with Sound Control is a desktop app for rapidly making bespoke digital instruments. The second thing I was going to say was there's a lot of things that were said by Tim in the session. Was it just before lunch or just after lunch? I've lost track of it now. But there are a lot of things that Tim said about the nature of certain projects, the advantages and the disadvantages of a small team developing its own software, that I thought really fit us well in the way that we've been working on this. So whilst we're talking today, just cast your mind back to some of the things that Tim was saying, because I think they're really key to how we've been working and why we've been working the way that we do. I've got a sneaking suspicion that there's some text coming up. Right, so this is really how we got into it. It was a discussion that we all had that, our belief, and I'm sure many people in the room feel that the more ways that we can find to make sound, to make music, the more inclusive everything will become. And that was our ambition right at the beginning, before we ever thought about what technologies we would be using. Right? And this is a lovely thing. This is just something that we sort of, as they say, we workshopped it together with just some keywords that we felt were really important for the way that sound control in its current incarnation actually works. It's about choice, it's about flexibility, it's about putting the young musicians at the heart of the digital instrument design-making process and all the prototyping that goes around that. And if we're lucky, because this next slide may shut me up, because I think, yes, but first, let us see it in action. Before you start, Rebecca, of course, Matej would have been in school today. But I had a little word with the head teacher, and she said, that would be wonderful if Matej can come and perform with you, but would you please take a video? I know you're doing one down there, but I did promise that I would do one as well. So I nearly forgot, and then I would have been in trouble, wouldn't I? And if you know this head teacher, you'll know what I mean. Rebecca, over to you.
Okay, so we've just set this instrument up just a few moments ago. We worked on music with similar sounds last week, and Matej's going to control the different pitches we're going to play. Enough talking though, let's do some playing. Over to you, Matej. Brilliant. Well done, Matej. Excellent. Can you take this off your hands? Ready? Superstar.
Sounds
Oh,
like we've not
we've still
finished.
got a sound going. There we go.
Of course, Matej, as usual, that was a brilliant performance. You've done several of these now, and I think that was absolutely beautiful. And it's amazing. We would have had more rehearsal time, but you met Matej because you hadn't worked with him for a bit, had you?
No, we've had a break over there.
Because of all things like the pandemic. And then you went over to his school, was it a couple of Mondays ago?
Yes.
And we were planning to have another session on Monday just gone. But unfortunately, other things got in the way. So I'm even more amazed by what Matej's been able to achieve with very little preparation. That was a beautiful song. Can we please give another round of applause?
Well done, Matej. Well done. Right, do you want to come and sit with Mum?
So the rest of it is now the boring bit and me talking and maybe with Rebecca's help demonstrating one or two things about how this software works. I think it would be nice just to see a little snippet. This is the first performance we ever did, and this is before the pandemic. The first performance that Matej did for us using sound control. This is at the Royal and Derngate Theatre, and I just want to play it because what you just heard was, if you like, and I choose my words carefully, it was a very musical performance in the sense we were using pitches and notes, and there was some rhythmic content to it as well. But of course, the great thing about sound control, it's not music control, it's sound control. So, depending on the circumstances, the creative circumstances that you want to use the software in, you may choose other devices, other samples. And this was a song, this was Rowan Gate Special School performing at the Royal and Derngate. It was a song about the seaside, yeah? And what better way to set up the vibe of a song at the seaside than to have some seaside sounds, some seaside samples performed at the beginning of the song. I'm sorry for the quality because it was done a very long way away. We weren't actually on stage. Now. I don't know whether you remember that, Matej. I should point out this is Dawn, who, as you can see, had been a really great collaborator on a lot of things we've done with sound control, just at the performance side of things. But it was great to see the two of them interacting there, I think. So the rest of the talk, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the philosophy behind it. I'm sure for most people in this room, none of this will be new information or new ways of thinking about how to use technology. But they're on the slides, so I better go through them, and then we will sort of segue into, am I being used as a guinea pig? I think that's the thing.
You can be used as a musician,
as a musician, sorry, I forgot, yes. So I think at some point we're going to do a little bit of demo with some of the devices, just so that you can see what's going on. So the words say everything that I would need to, really. But it was really just to investigate new ways of new devices, new software to allow anybody to be able to play sound. And I think one of the important things that's been put up there is that, you know, for a lot of children, their movements may not be very great. They may be very small, they may be very subtle. Other children may have much less control over their movements and really want to spread out and do lots of different things. We needed the software to be adaptable, to allow for the same range of expression, whether someone's making very small movements or someone's making very large movements, or whatever movements that they might want to make. And I mean, this is some of the things I think Tim was saying earlier. You know, we don't have a lot of money, so we needed to find a way to make it very low cost and very free. So we use, I mean, not that a Mac is very low cost. Let's face it. But it's, you know, it will work on PC as well, on laptops, on desktop computers. We use microbits. We have this old PlayStation 2 golf controller, which is a gem of a device, and that's something that I might talk about at the end because we need more things like that. But you know, it was very important that it was something that didn't need to spend loads of money on, and that people could develop and program on the fly, as Rebecca was just doing earlier, as they wanted to. Yeah, and I think the bit I said at the beginning about, yes, not every device, you can't just plug anything in and it will instantaneously work, and I hope everybody appreciates why that is the case. But we were looking for a sort of generalised model that would begin to push us into that direction. And the other important thing about that was allowing it to be customisable to the individual. So that's quite a big ask, really, because you can have lots of little devices and apps and things that work very well for one specific young person. And I think when we started this, we wanted to push the boat out a little bit and have something that was a little bit more adaptable. I think that's made things quite difficult in terms of developing the software so that everybody can use it. But as we say, it's our mission. It was our ambition to do that when we started. That's another one just about the ability of the individual to control the sound. Now, we do work on this project, the way it was set up. We collaborated with some computer musicians who at the time were at Goldsmiths University within the computer music department, and they were developing the software, or the original version of the software, and they were working in partnership with Rebecca and Jan, who at that time were working as music specialists at Rowan Gate Special School, and with all the young people which they work with. So it's a truly sort of collaborative venture where everybody was involved in designing it. The first version of the software was based off an older program that Dr. Feebrink had developed many years ago called the Wekinator, and each iteration of sound control has been taking that original model and adding more things to it so we can use more controllers and different ways of making sound, which we'll get onto in a little bit. And this was the team. I've tried to track where everybody is now, because apart from me, who is very boring and still at NMPAT, everybody else has moved on. So Hugo, Sam, Martin, Dr. Feebrink, at the time we started doing the software, they were all at Goldsmiths in the computer music department. They've moved on to different places. Hugo's in France somewhere. I think he was at IRCAM for a bit, if anybody knows that place in Paris. But I'm sure these other places are probably very similar. Sam's off doing probably some, I think Dreamweaver, probably some gaming software. Martin, Solid State Logic, I think they do. That's mixers and desks and things like that. I'm the only person who's still doing the same thing. But Jan and Rebecca, as I said, were at Rowan Gate Special School in Wellingborough. Jan is a music therapist as well and has her own organisation, Thomas's Fund, which is a music therapy organisation. And Rebecca has transcended to become a very important part of not only the musical inclusion team, which I head up, but also part of the keyboard department here at NMPAT. So I just went through some of these because the demos will probably be more interesting, but just so that you can see it, because you probably couldn't see it down there. This is the game track. It's one of those things where probably you had a golf. I was going to say golf stick, it's not like it's a club. That shows my breeding, doesn't it? I don't know anything about golf. And you obviously connected it in some way. But the great thing about it, and it's a bit of hardware we would really like to develop of our own in the future, it's got a thing that comes, I won't move it because Rebecca may want to use it in a second.
Go for it, go for it.
Yeah, that's all right, okay. So it's got such a lot of range of movements. Now, Rebecca's connected these two things together. That doesn't have to be the case. But because you've got that movement and the speed of moving that in and out, so that's one parameter, and you've got two of those. And then, of course, they move in 360 degrees. So you've got all that going on at the same time. And so when Matej was playing earlier, the choices to the sounds have been mapped to match the movements that he wanted to make. So we were having this discussion just before we came in because we were trying to set things up, not knowing how long we had. And, it's a bit like, well, let's find somewhere where you can rest and have silence, that's comfortable for you to rest and have silence. And we programmed that in. Then he said, well, let's have that sound over here, maybe that sound over there. And what behind the software, and something that I know nothing about, are some machine learning algorithms that help to map and interpolate, which I think is the fancy word, do lots of interpolation between these for instances. So you can sometimes get a lot of continuous changes in sound, which was also one of the goals. Not for it just to be a switching between one sound and another, although we do that as well, but to try and have some continuous changes in sound. Microbit, I think we were talking about those a bit earlier. Mine's been a bit flaky today. Of course it's been flaky today because the Bluetooth wasn't connecting earlier. I think we're okay now, but we'll soon find out. There are a few other things. Now, we need these gloves, cost of living crisis, very handy, but we can use them to control sound control as well. We ought to try and look at that if we can get that working. I think what I'd like to do now is to do a little bit of demo. Yeah, Rebecca, would you like to set something up?
Yeah, should we?
And get me to.
Microbit.
We're going to use the microbit to start off with.
Yeah. So, where is it on your?
I don't know. It was here somewhere. Yeah. I can't see my mouse, Rebecca. Where's it gone?
It's very tiny. It's just here.
I know.
There.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
This is really a young person's job, isn't it? My
so
eyesight.
if we go up.
There we are.
Let's go for
You got it. Okay.
Let's see if the microbit is connected.
When you get into sound control, the first setting that you get is on the left-hand side, you have a sensor select. Could you open that up so we could see the drop down, Rebecca? On the left-hand, sensor select.
Sensor select.
So at the moment, these are the sensors that we use, game track, dumb camera, that's just a very pixelated image on the camera that control movement. Colour tracker, which I think we ought to have a quick look at that at some point. Leap motion, I won't talk about that device. It didn't work particularly well with our clients. Nice device, but not so suitable for a lot of people we work with. Bluetooth, microbit, which be controlled by Bluetooth and USB. And slightly more experimental, I think. We've not done too much with this, using the microphone and the sound pressure with a microphone. And when you're really fancying multi-colour tracker. So not just one colour, but lots of colours. And you can use your mouse as well, but and that's usually for testing at our end.
Well, the mouse is interactive with other things, like you can have a mouse ball, or we've used the mouse with the eye gaze computer. I don't know if anyone's worked with the Tobii eye gaze. So wherever your mouse is on the screen can make a different note. So that's really effective when linked with other softwares like that.
Yeah. And then so you select the sensor that you want to work with a particular client or a particular musician, and then we have a number of sound making devices. And I'll hand over to you, Rebecca, see what you want to do first.
Okay, so I'm going to try this one and see if this is connected. It is.
That was good.
So that's for you, Simon. We had got this on a really nice bracelet that Simon could wear, but this is the one that's not working.
Sorry, I was fiddling around with this last night, and I hadn't got round to retaking it and put it back on the bracelet, but I can do this. I can do this, honest.
Okay, so we're playing this groovy little brass loop. So I'm going to ask Simon just to show me the movements he wants to make with his hand that he's using. And it's recording those movements on those X, Y, Z coordinates there. And now if I hand that over to him, he's now controlling what happens to that sound. Obviously, this is really random at the moment. But Simon can change that sound. Slowing it down. Great. So that demonstrated a quick recording, but if we want to set those to precise pitches or speeds or volume, and the one we're going to demo today is just the volume, so if you wanted to stop it like in a relaxed position, if you wanted to stop that sound because you've heard enough trumpet loops.
I've heard enough trumpet.
So where Simon's resting now and just recording that as a silence position. So if you make your movements, that was back over to you. And then if you want to bring the sound to a stop.
I don't want to bring it to a stop.
Okay. So there's still a little bit of sound there, so I could tweak that and say, actually, that position's slightly different to the one you made before. And I can tweak that as you go along. So that's add in a new rest position.
Oh.
Okay, I was taking it off. But yeah, that's a really quick demo of how you can set up that. You can get more and more precise depending on what you want the outcome to be, but that's a...
Yeah. So, I mean, this particular module on the musical side is a granulator. So it allows you, obviously, as you can see, to control the speed, the pitch and the volume. There are some samples built into it, the trumpet, the organ, the brass, but you can put any file that you want in, any MP3 or any WAV file. So you don't have to put up with the trumpet for too long, all right? I mean, there's some other buttons there, like randomize. So if you really want to just experiment with things, you hit the randomize button and that sets up a sort of random speed, pitch and volume. Perhaps so you can just experiment with things like that. And I seem to remember in the development process, the red button, very important, to stop the sound when you've had enough of the trumpet. So I'm just trying to think, could we have a look at the colour tracker?
Yeah.
We're a little bit reluctant to do this one because it's light sensitive because it's tracking colours on the laptop camera. And we thought, well, let's not do that because we don't know what the colour is going to be like in the room. But rather foolishly, I've now said we will do it. And this was one, during lockdown, when things were so difficult, you may remember, Laura, this is Matei's mum, Laura, we were trying to do things online and trying to get Laura to set up the software at home with me coaching her online. We spent many hours doing that, didn't we? Oh dear. But I do remember we did get it set up. And I think Matei wasn't very happy because at one point, I seem to remember you had a bit of cloth on your head, which was brightly coloured, and you were just sitting there for ages, just moving and controlling the sound. Matei was getting more and more cross because he wasn't having a go. So, what have we got?
So we found this works really well with nice primary colours. Do you want to go for the aforementioned warming gloves?
I need to be by the camera, then.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, I also need to be by the camera so I can see which one to press. So I'm telling it to look at the colour red, and then I'm just taking all the other background down so it can only see red. Not your arm as well. Okay, I think that should go.
Yeah, okay.
So let's do, it's very quiet. What's a louder sound? Okay, let's go for all of those. So if you want to move your hand to a different position, and then maybe if you take your hand away completely, you can have silence, and then, oh. I'm just going to make sure. Take your hand away completely. That should be over to you.
You put another sound in somewhere, didn't you?
Yep. And obviously you can add in as many sounds as you like, or anything that is a sound file. So if it's just a single A note, you can put that in.
Could you just go away now?
Yes, I was having a lovely time. This is where the background of the room is not ideal because it's picking up on.
So hopefully that gives you some idea about, think about some of the things, some of the words used earlier about the digital instrument, the rapid prototyping. So what we're doing there is actually, this is the way I look at it. I think Rebecca and Jan probably look at it in a slightly different ways, and I think we all have different ways of understanding the beauty about the way the software works. But for me, and again I think this gels with some things that were said earlier, it's about a creative process that a musician or a creative practitioner sits down with somebody else, in this case today it's been with Matei, another musician, and goes through a process of creating a sound world, a musical, for instance, that's going to work for that particular performance. And, we do work with some clients that may not talk to us very much. And therefore, the ability to sit down and say, what would you like to do? Would you like to play the drums? Would you like to do this? It may be very difficult to get a sense of what they want to do because of that. And so the thing that I've been amazed with, and this is why I think you also need not a skilled digital computer programmer, but a skilled creative musical practitioner in the mix as well. It's about thinking through and working together about what those musical, for instances, would be. For example, going back to the little video clip we saw earlier with the seaside sounds, I don't think any of us had thought about that to be a possibility, a creative possibility for the use of the software until it became a creative necessity. We had something that we needed to do. We had a seaside song. It needed something at the beginning. Someone obviously said, why don't we just load some seaside samples into that and see how that works? And it worked brilliantly. You've got lots of sweeps and swooshes of the sound. And for me, that's the beauty of it. And I don't know if you two want to say anything else about, from your perspectives, what's been, sort of highlights of some of the interactions that we've seen with some of the children you've worked with.
I think for me, it's been able to do it independently and controlling it yourself, not another adult. I think that was the big thing for me, is that as adults working in this world, you tend to set things up and put them there for children to use, and then it's perhaps fixed with what you've chosen, and now it's a chance for them to make the choices themselves and not have other people doing it for them. Yeah. That was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. Rebecca, have you got anything to...
Yeah, the same as Jan said, really, because we customise it around the musicians, the participants, and it's very much based on their movements, what they want to do, and they take the lead.
And I think that's in particular, because it's always a pleasure to work with Matei, but that's why I was really clear that I wanted him to come in and perform, because I think you can see, when you see him perform, you can see him making very specific choices about the range. I mean, in this particular instance, the way we set it up, the range of notes, how high, how low, and you can really get a palpable sense of Matei being in control of the sounds that he wants to make. And, seeing him perform is worth 1,000 words, I think.
Also, another thing, Sam, you can choose not to play if you don't want to. Imitate. If you don't want to play, you don't have to. Which sometimes that doesn't happen in some situations, does it?
Yes, better not tell the county orchestra this, Peter. That they don't have to play if they don't want to. I'm just trying to think if there's any other modules. Would you like to show, what else could we do? We want to say the FM synth, because there's a little bit of a story behind that, isn't there?
Yeah, I can do another...
I'm picking on the FM synth because this is one of the early sound modules, frequency modulation synthesis. Now, you either know what that is or you don't. What you probably do know, that if you have an FM radio and you've not tuned it into the right station, it makes an awful sound. And so FM modulation can make very awful sounds. It can make very nice sounds. And when this was a musical module that was in right at the start, and I was getting a bit ratty because, oh, for goodness sake, it's just screechy sounds. Oh, can't we have something that can? And we do now have something that, which is I think what you were using, was the MIDI module that connects to an external MIDI device, whether that's a digital audio workstation or anything that reads MIDI and can produce sound. And I was thinking, I don't like this at all. Can't we have something more musical? You see, you can see how backward my thinking is. But I think the point about it is that this one is really can be really sensitive to movements. And with some of the children we're working with, it was the first time when they were perhaps using, say, the game track, where they would make a small movement, and then over time, they'd suddenly get the realization that they were making the sound. And that felt like that was the first step for that individual into understanding, when you could not explain it to them, that first step to understand that they are now in control of sound. But shall we hear the FM synth so that people can
What device would you like to use?
Well, I don't
the
know
game
what
track or the
device.
microbit might work nice with
Well,
these.
I've not tested, because that's Catalina, or I think it is.
Should we go
I've
for the
not tested it on
microbit
that.
as we know it's set
Yeah,
up?
use that one. Is it this
Okay.
one? Yeah?
Yeah.
Hope it's still connected. Oh, yes.
There we go. We have our lovely.
You can see what I mean.
What a sound to end the day with. Okay, so
Shall I do some small movements this time?
should we find where the off sound is first? So wherever you'd like to not make sound, Simon. Okay, up there. And yeah, do you want to just demo? But maybe you're not feeling as energetic as before, so smaller movements. And just do a quick record. Randomise. Okay, and then that should be over to you.
Do you like that one, Matei? I was going to, this might be too much. We did have a very popular sample pack. Because this sound is now reminding me of this.
Do you
There
want
were
me
a lot of the children really loved. It was a sample pack of fart sounds.
Just going to turn this
So you
down.
can just imagine.
I'm just turning it down while you're talking, Simon.
But because it's very, you can, it just put it back up again.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So you can make quite dramatic changes in sound with very small movements, or even big movements. But it's really noticeable that you're doing something. Oh, I feel a piece coming on.
So there's a little movement you're doing there, which doesn't make a difference. But I can see you're repeating that same movement, so I could set something interesting to happen there.
Yeah.
If we had a bit more time to set up the instrument.
Let me have a quick look at the time. I think we're probably getting near our allotted time. I hope that's been really valuable for you.
Can I also say that while we were developing this, we used other children at Rowan Gate that had better computer skills than me to test it out, and they were able to say which bits were clunky and things that should be changed before we got this far, which was really useful.
Actually, you've got a little snippet of that, haven't you? Who's allowed? Who's doing that?
Yeah, it's Connor. It's not the next one, I think.
So this is all the.
That's
Oh,
what
there,
it's testing
hold
at
on.
the
There it
microbit.
is. So the interface looks a little bit different because this is a previous version of it, but.
Because I wouldn't have known it was clunky.
He was very lucky because whoever programmed that microbit, they've also put some nice LED display on it, haven't they? And this is Jan in a very cold house demonstrating the colour tracker, but we've demonstrated that now. You know, some of the key benefits, we talked about this, you know, managed to adapt the interface to respond to very small movements, and that can be really important for some of the children we work with. I think enjoyed the ability to customise things on the fly because it's fun. It's fun to do it, and you get instant results. I've talked about the collaboration with the facilitator and that sort of creative journey that you would go on together. And this is our big statement to finish with. I'll read this one out because I think it's really important. The whole purpose of this project is to enable all children and young people to have the same musical experiences. And actually, that's a lot to unpack. Maybe another conference for that, I think. Be able to play independently and show their creativity. That's also really key. Making their own decisions in the same way as any musician can. And then even more important, it is our responsibility to make this work, not theirs. Thank you very much, everybody. Absolutely brilliant.
Rebecca, Jan, Mate, Laura, thank you so much for presenting that. It's enlightening, isn't it? It's fantastic. How can we get hold of it?
Oh yes, I think there was another slide. And yet again, I'm going to use Tim's name in vain again, because it's something that now we maintain it. The computer musicians who did it, the computer programmers who did it originally, are sort of doing lots of other things. I do sort of maintain it. I had to do some little tweaks on it when Max got updated to Catalina and beyond and things like that. So it's all free software. You can download it. There is a website. It needs updating, which was done before the pandemic. Some of that can be downloaded from there. However, as they say, the cutting edge ones. Rebecca Feebrink has her own GitHub site. For those of you who know the GitHub site, it's like an open source place where you can keep all the code. Or those who don't know, I should say. And I've opened up my own GitHub site. What I don't have on my GitHub site are releases. But what I suggest you do, if you're interested in having this, is email me, say what machine you're using, whether it's a Mac, what operating system you've got on the Mac, and what you want to perhaps connect it to, and I'll compile a version then. It's written in a program called Max, which I think, again, Tim referred to earlier, and I can quite quickly just double-check the version that you're getting is the one that's going to work on the machines that you've got. So by all means, it's open source, so if you want to go on and see the source code, play around with yourself, you'll need Max MSP to run the program before it's compiled. Yes, you're very welcome to, and that's where you can find it. All right, thank you.
We also say we are looking for people to help us make more controllers, particularly the game track. I've already tracked down a couple of people already, but if anybody's interested, that would be really good, wouldn't it?
Yes, and particularly, getting our own bespoke version of the game track, because I think it's been a few years since the PS2 was cutting-edge technology. But that is a great controller. But I'm sure we can find a way to do it. But it's time, and sometimes, as we've been saying, it is money as well. But it's all to be done in the future. Thank you.
Any questions at all? No. If not, Simon, you're going to be around for a little bit after.
Oh yes, yeah.
But that's really it for today. We're going to finish with a plenary session, but really that's just looking at what we've done today, what we've learned today.